Good afternoon. So today I just wanted to do a little recap of the things they carried in Tim O'Brien's virtual talk. First of all, Tim O'Brien's talk was awesome. Reading many of your responses, I had the same reactions as you did. Um, One particular quote that several of you wrote about in your response was when O'Brien said, "Wars don't end with the signing of peace treaties." I thought that was an awesome way of putting that, and definitely a great line and quote from his speech, his talk. Um, Other moments that several of you wrote about that I found to be strong takeaways for me, just how he expressed the power of storytelling. I feel like all throughout his talk. And you can tell that Tim O'Brien's a writer in the way that he answers questions or the way he makes a point. He used anecdotes and he used storytelling in his talk as a way to kind of address his book and some of the questions that viewers had. And so, in particular, him talking about the letter that he received from um, the young woman who expressed her gratitude for the book opening up her father to communicate more and talk about his own experience and what happened to him. Um, I just you could tell during the speech, how even Tim O'Brien, would get very emotional at times talking about certain things, and I was very surprised to hear him talk about him feeling a certain guilt and responsibility for the young girl that they came across, um, who O'Brien even went on to describe her face was unrecognizable. And it was just really interesting talk that he gave. I loved his approach to the whole talk. I think it wouldn't have been as interesting if he just talked about like specific chapters of the book or what the book meant and things like that. But to focus his talk more on his reasons for why he chose to write it as a fiction, which obviously was a big part of his speech too. Um, and then just the way he expressed again the power of storytelling. I thought that was very profound. For me, as someone who has loved literature all my life, obviously, being an English professor, I'm always trying to um, reinforce this idea with my students in their own writing is how powerful storytelling can be and conveying a message and reaching an audience. And so I'm a huge fan of storytelling. My family, I feel like storytelling is a big part of my family tradition and us passing along stories from one generation to the next, gathering around together as a family. We love telling stories, especially funny ones. So I think that I was really appreciative of him kind of dedicating a lot of his speech to the power of storytelling, um, explaining how even a fiction, can bring a family together, especially when a fiction is written so in a way that feels so real, and I think that's the takeaway for all of us that read this book. Many of you expressed this in your journal responses that you were surprised to hear that it was a fiction, and I was surprised too when I found that out for the first time. And it's just a testament to Tim O'Brien's skill, his craft as a writer, being able to write that story in such vivid detail and description, and in such a way that we all walk away from it feeling like that really happened, and we carry the book with us, even after we read it. No pun intended there. So I really enjoyed the speech, and I was happy to read that many of you enjoyed it too. Um, Back to the last chapters that we read on the Rainy River. That's one of my personal favorite from Tim O'Brien's collection. Just the way he expresses um, the raw human reaction to learning that you're being drafted for a war. and just his ability to take the reader and put the reader in his shoes as you're reading that chapter. And I really liked how your guys' letters to Tim O'Brien and your creative responses turned out, by the way, too. It was awesome to read you all, to read all of your responses and hear how you also feel like you would have reacted the same way Tim O'Brien did. And I know that's how I feel in reading that chapter, is I just can't imagine um, ever receiving a letter and learning that you've been drafted for a war, and especially a war that you personally don't agree with, and that you have your own personal feelings and issues with. I just can't imagine being in that situation. It's just unreal. And so I just love how he writes that chapter and expressing how that must feel to learn about something like that that's going to affect your life so significantly, and being just torn about the whole thing. I really appreciate his honesty in writing about how his biggest fear was just letting down his friends and family. How that was one of the main factors and driving forces behind him deciding um, to go to war. Was just not wanting to face the disappointment um, of his family and friends. And I could definitely relate to that. How I could understand how that's kind of a way to rationalize, and or becomes a reason why you end up deciding to go to war. And then just the whole imagery of that chapter, the whole image of him literally going out onto the water and just being right at the border, and Canada just on the other side of the river, and just that whole image that Tim O'Brien paints for the reader, which is very metaphorical. This idea of having to go out into nature and just being um, facing your decision head on, completely. And it's just like a perfect image and metaphor, even, for everything that goes into how a person might feel in making that type of decision. And then the man I killed in ambush, for me, those are also personal favorite chapters of mine as well. I guess that's probably why I chose these chapters, but I just wanted to choose one at the beginning, one kind of in the middle, which is again that turning point in the book where O'Brien is faced with the decision of whether or not to go to war. And then the last chapters we read, which are related to Tim O'Brien talking about the man that he killed, which was a young Vietnamese soldier. And it's really interesting to hear his speech after reading that, right? And how he told a real account of coming across a girl that had died from the gunfire, and him feeling responsible for that. It's interesting now after hearing that speech to think about the man I killed in ambush. And again, I just thought it was really cool how he gave the Vietnamese soldier a background story, and made him a character in that chapter. And I know in another speech I heard Tim O'Brien give to some college students, he explained how part of him writing this book as a fiction is he wanted to give the war a face, and I think that chapter really embodies that message that he gave to those students, and wanting to give the war a face. And I remember in that speech he talked about how it's easy to hear about the war on the news and just hear the war in terms of the number of casualties, statistics, numbers, the number of lives lost, and then it's on to the next news bit. And he talked about how oftentimes the way we report things, humanity gets lost in that, and that um, the people that died don't get honored the way they should, or aren't given the face that they deserve. And so I think that's part of that chapter in reminding us that this is humanity that's lost, that this was a person, this was somebody's son, this was somebody's significant other, this was a person who had hopes and dreams, just like Tim O'Brien did on the other side of things. So I really like those chapters too, and how Tim O'Brien um, gives the war a face, so to speak. So just a little recap of the things they carried. I'm really pleased with how this section of class churned out. This is not a book that I've taught before, so I was kind of curious to see how this would go. You know, the creative writing assignments, those I came up with myself, and I was really pleased with the responses that I got from you guys. The creative responses were just awesome. And based on your responses, I want to teach this book in future 102 courses because I think it brought out for many of you some of your best writing. And so I really appreciate your written responses that went with the assignments for this book, your creative writing responses, especially. I loved reading those, and I just thought we did a great job with that. So, with all that being said, I'd like to continue with this Vietnam theme, and I was trying to think of what we could do next, carrying and pushing forward with that theme. And every semester, I like to work with visuals in both my 101 and 102 classes. And it's been more difficult this semester with not being able to present things to the class in person, which I love to do, and using the resources I have available to me in a classroom. But I was just thinking, with restrictions tightening with COVID now, and us probably um, all going to be reduced to our homes a bit more and being homebodies, I was thinking that we could do a film section carrying on with the Vietnam theme. And I just feel like the Vietnam theme works really well with a film section for a course related to a book because there are just so many great movies about the Vietnam War. And in fact, some Vietnam War movies are considered to be some of the best movies of all time. So, for this next section of class, the next 2 weeks, going into Thanksgiving break, I'd like to do a film section for the class related to the Vietnam War and the things that they carried. And so, what I have are a list. I have a list of 5 Vietnam War films, and these 5 are critically acclaimed films. Some of them Oscar nominated and Oscar award winning. Um, and again, some of these films are considered to be some of the greatest films of all time, period. So your assignment is you are going to be required to watch just 2 of these 5. So you could choose any 2 of the 5. I understand that we don't all have like free access to some of these movies. So I was just kind of looking on my own to see what it costs to rent some of these. And typically you can rent these movies for $3 on Amazon or other streaming services. And if you have Netflix, which I'm guessing many of you do, 2 of the 5 movies are actually on Netflix, and you would be able to just watch those easily for no additional charge. Now, if you have to go about renting these movies as your means of watching them and you spend over $10, then I can give you extra credit for that. I don't mind doing that if this creates an inconvenience for you, but I just think given technology and you guys being resourceful, I'm sure you guys probably have other ways of watching these movies online for free through other streaming platforms or ones that you find that are free. So here's my list of 5. You only have to watch 2. And then in another email or video lecture to follow, I'll talk more about your responses to the films. But I'm not looking for anything crazy here. Just we'll say 2 500 word or more analysis, review type of responses to 2 of the five films. So 500 words minimum for each response. 500 words is just a page and a half. So here are the 5. So we got Full Metal Jacket, which is this personal favorite of mine, which I'll be doing a recap and a review of in another lecture video to follow, just because I know that movie really well. Very controversial movie by Stanley Kubrick, and Stanley Kubrick is just one of the greatest film directors of all time, and that movie is definitely considered a classic. So, Full Metal Jacket. Movie number 2, which can be found on Netflix, is Platoon, and definitely another Vietnam movie that's considered a classic. I've also seen this film, and so I would personally recommend it to anyone anyway. but the acting is really great in that movie. It's been a while since I've seen it, but William Dafoe, awesome in that movie. Charlie Sheen, this great film with great acting and great directing. So film number two is Platoon. You can find that one on Netflix. Film number three you can also find on Netflix, and this one just came out. I think it came out either earlier this year or last year, but it's a Spike Lee movie called The Five Bloods. The Five Bloods, and I've also seen that movie. Great movie. Really interesting, creative way of addressing the Vietnam War, as only Spike Lee can do. I don't know if any of you are Spike Lee fans, but I'm a fan of his, and I think he always makes great movies, thought-provoking, very visually dynamic movies, and this movie is no exception. The acting in The Five Bloods also awesome. Chadwick Boseman, I believe that was one of the last movies that he made before he died, or maybe the last movie. So, movie number three, The Five Bloods. I think that one is definitely worth watching, just considering that it just came out, and another critically acclaimed movie that received really good reviews from critics. And again, you can find that one on Netflix too. The last two movies are older, but these are movies that again are considered classic films. They appear on many um, best movie lists. And these two I personally haven't seen, but now that we're doing this section of class, I've always wanted to watch these movies, and so now I'm making it a point to watch them now that I'll be doing this assignment with you guys for this film section of the Vietnam War. So the last two movies are Deer Hunter and Apocalypse Now. Deer Hunter and Apocalypse Now. I won't really say anything about those two movies because I haven't seen them, but I know they're considered to be classics. Both of them very critically acclaimed, award nominated, award winning, I believe, both of them. And so I'm excited for this section because now I'm going to make a point to watch these two movies, which I've been meaning to watch for so long. So your assignment for the next 2 weeks is to watch two of my five Vietnam films. And again, those are Full Metal Jacket, Platoon, The Five Bloods, those two, which you can find on Netflix, and Deer Hunter and Apocalypse Now. So, in another email to follow, I'll explain a bit more and give some more guidelines to the assignment, your written responses that go with those films. But again, you only need to choose two. I'm just looking for a 500 word or more response. It could be an analysis, a review, um, your own personal takeaway from the film. I'm very open for these assignments to free you up as writers to write them as you see fit. So, hope you enjoy the films. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, I hope trying to watch these films or renting them or accessing them doesn't provide any type of inconvenience. If it does, email, let me know if it does, and we can work on maybe an alternative assignment that goes outside of just watching these films. So, again, thank you for your creative responses and your writing that went with the things they carried. Again, I think it just went really well, and now I'm encouraged to use this book in future 102 classes based on the work that you guys have submitted that's gone with it. So I appreciate that. Enjoy the rest of your week. And again, email me if you have any questions about this next section of class, film section on the Vietnam War, continuing from the things they carried.